Refusal Criteria. Chapter 9. Homecoming. The plane touched down in Nashville around 5 p.m. Richie rented a car and at sunset was sitting in his driveway looking over the deserted farm with its unmowed yard. It was only 4 years ago when the barn was freshly painted and full of registered walkers. It overlooked a well-groomed arena with a beautiful hayfield and fishing pond behind. Today, his eyes saw only an empty barn next to an arena overgrown with milkweed. Behind it was an uncut hayfield that had begun to lie down from thickness, and the pond was completely covered in moss. Nevertheless, Richie smiled. He knew his family was gone, but they were alive. One thing at a time. He could get them back with the first step being getting home and getting his mind right. The memories trickled in as this visual stimulation sparked them everywhere he looked. The place was still very nice to look at as the shadows grew long and so many memories flooded into his head. The big oak under which the kids had carved pumpkins. The spot where Blue was buried after a fatal encounter with a speeding car. The pond where so many evenings were spent watching bobbers. Richie shut the motor off and walked to the front door. As he entered, he could smell the fish tank, and it looked as horrible as it smelled. The power was on the verge of being shut off before Richie left, and it looked as if it had been off for over a week if the tank water was any indication. A flip of the light switch confirmed what was obvious upon walking through the front door. He walked over and pulled the shades open to gather what was left of the evening light. When he turned around, he saw a man sitting on his chaise. Richie was so stunned that he stumbled backwards over an end table and sent it, the lamp sitting on it and himself sprawling to the ground. He stared at the figure sitting silently in his living room. He was sharply dressed in a tie and suit pants with a full-length camel hair coat. "Who are you?" "Who do you think I am, Mr. Bynes?" "Mr. Wolf." "That is correct." Richie's heart sank with this news. He had never met Mr. Wolf in person, only his associates. C. Thomas Wolf was a very powerful man around Nashville and was Richie's employer for the last 3 years. He used his middle name rather than his first because he was named after and, supposedly, related to the famous author Thomas Wolfe. "Mr. Wolf, what are you doing here?" "I would normally send my associates to take care of this sort of business, but the only 2 associates that I would trust with this assignment are out of town at the moment. You've been a very bad boy, Mr. Bynes. I believe you have $1.25 million that belongs to me." Richie suddenly remembered and spoke without thinking, as if controlled by Mr. Wolf's Jedi powers. "It's 1.28, he said in a monotone voice. "Even worse. Somehow, I knew your guys were following me. I could feel them on my trail. No one was following you, Mr. Bynes." "What do you mean? Where were you going to go?" Richie was taken aback by the calm demeanor and by the fact that he was not concerned about him disappearing with over $1 million in cash. "Where is my money?" It flowed off of his lips as the memory came to him. "The money is in the bag, and the bag is in the hole." "Show me." "Wait a minute. That's not how this is going to work. How do I know that you won't kill me as soon as I give you the money?" "Mr. Bynes, that is a foregone conclusion. This is not going to have a happy ending, and there is nothing that can be done about that." "Then I won't take you to the money." Richie suddenly realized he was in control of this situation, and things were going to go his way for a change. "Mr. Bynes, do you remember that I told you that my 2 top associates were out of town?" This was not going to be good. Richie quietly said, "Yes. Right about now, they are arriving at the El Camino Real restaurant in Warsaw, Missouri." He checked his watch. In approximately 1 hour and 22 minutes, they are going to get in the car and drive to 315 5th Street in Hermitage, Missouri. They will park in the driveway, walk into the house, and kill everything that breathes, including Martha the cat. And since they have been stuck in a Fleabag motel in Warsaw for the last 2 weeks, I wouldn't expect it to be quick or painless. Suddenly, Richie could not take a breath. He staggered and went to his knees. The cat's name actually was Martha. The fact that he knew this was too frightening to even comprehend. It means they had already been there. Professional killers had been under the same roof as his children. "Breathe, Mr. Bynes. You have the power to stop this, but you can't do it if you are passed out on the floor. You take me to the money, and I call it off." That's how this is going to go down. And me? Nothing can be done about that now. We have already had this discussion. I know you want to tell me that I could use an associate with the guts to steal from a man like me, and that's true. I know you are having fantasies about being my right-hand man and making dirty money clean until we are old and gray and telling stories about the good old days. The fact of the matter is that this is not a movie. The good guys are not going to win. There is no happy ending. Richie gathered his strength and got back to his feet. I understand, just please don't hurt my family. Money. Now, Richie led the way out of the house and across the hayfield. He almost chuckled to himself, thinking about how 5 years ago he never would have believed he would be leading an organized crime boss across his property, unless it was to look at a new painted fold that he was going to buy. How he would never have believed he would have over $1 million in cash in a bag in a hole within a clump of trees across this hayfield. He stopped and looked back at Mr. Wolf. The tawny full-length coat contrasted against the deep green of the fescue, such a rich shade of green that even in the fading light it glimmered as it ebbed and flowed in the evening breeze. His eyes led him back over his right shoulder to where the sun had sunk below the blackened tree line. A brush stroke of crimson and pumpkin hung low in the sky in effigy of the brilliance that was blinding only an hour ago. He never realized just how beautiful it was, how peaceful. Is there a problem, Mr. Bynes? Wolf broke the silence, and he involuntarily turned his head back to the well-dressed figure. No, actually, there isn't. Then may we continue? I suppose we can. They approached the bluff of thick trees, and he descended down the richly carpeted walls of the miniature canyon that 20 years ago were the steep banks of a 3-acre lake. Well, perhaps more pond than lake, depending on your frame of reference. When they reached the bottom, you could hardly even tell the hole was there. The vertical mouth of the cave was so overgrown with roots and scrub that one could easily step into it without notice. It was at the base of a large walnut tree, and the earthen walls were fully supported by its tangled root system on 3 sides. Richie knelt and brushed aside some saplings, exposing the black hole just as he had done before. When he placed the bag here, he was careful to avoid the poison ivy creeping out from the base of the tree. A chuckle escaped his lips as he thought about the fact that the last time he was here, poison ivy was his biggest concern. He also appreciated the irony that he took such great care to find the perfect place to hide the money, a place that was completely invisible and known to no one on Earth but his son and himself. It was perfect, the perfect place to hide a bag of money or a body, and it would never, ever be found. That is unless his son returned to this place. This thought made his stomach roll and his head pound with anxiety, realizing that his son would likely be the one to find his rotting body. Richie hopped down into the chest-deep hole and bent down on one knee. The chamber he knelt in was about as big as the interior of a mid-sized car. To his left was an opening the size of a crawlspace entrance that quickly opened up into a massive cavern. It went down 15 or 20 yards to the crystal-clear water below. To his right was the corner of the blue Nike bag bulging from a web of roots. He grabbed the corner and pulled the bag free. He unzipped the bag and looked down on the pile of bundled hundreds. He also looked down on his .45 long slide with a clip full of ammo. Richie slipped the .45 next to his leg and zipped the bag back up. The gun had a round in the chamber. Should he decide to hide it beneath the bag as he handed it up, it would be visible only after Wolf had both hands occupied with lifting the bag. He would have the drop on him and negotiate for his family after that. He cocked the hammer and supported the bottom of the bag with the gun and the handles with his free hand. "Here, reach down and grab it." Mr. Wolf replied with, "Throw it out." Richie was not prepared for that. "It's too heavy. Throw it out." Richie peeked up to see he was looking down the barrel of some kind of 9mm pistol, but from your knees in a dirt hole it looked like a .44 Magnum. And this meek-statured Mr. Wolf looked like Dirty Harry. He was not prepared for a shootout. What if he froze, or even just hesitated? He pitched the bag out of the hole and hid the gun quickly with his leg. Wolf did not bend to pick it up. He did not even look at it once it hit the ground. His eyes and gun were trained squarely on Richie. Back on both knees, head down. His mind raced, thinking about how to give himself the best shot at climbing out of this hole. All that was clear was that the next step was to kneel back down. Wolf had to count the money before offing him, and this would give him a few minutes to think. Back on his knees, Richie scanned an ocean of options to see what jumped out at him. It was possible that Wolf would let him go. There was no advantage to killing him, especially killing him personally. Why take that chance yourself? If Wolf walked away with the money, it's not like Richie could call the police. But Richie knew by the emotionless look in this man's eyes that it was coming. He would have to turn and start blasting. The last call received on Wolf's cell phone would be the killer's. It would not be difficult to impersonate Wolf long enough to say, "I got it," and hang up. That is if there were even killers out there. A mafia-style hit going down in small-town America would bring unwanted attention. Just in case, he would have to hope he didn't hit the phone with a round. It was his only shot. It was worth the risk. Richie took a deep breath and decided, let's do this on 1, 5, 4, 3.